Join us as career changers, company leaders, industry experts, and others who have been in your shoes share their stories, insights, and lessons learned to help you find enjoyment through employment in the tech world. I'm Nemo Ashong, and this is the Empjoyment Podcast. Hey there, employees. Nemo Ashong here, and let's get into today's episode, which features Angélique Bélizair. And Angélique is someone who is just quite impressive throughout her journey. She is working as a product designer, and it is quite awesome to hear her overall experience. Today, when you listen to this podcast, I want you to look out for some actionable takeaways around leveraging the design process to design your next product, investing in your growth through courses, boot camps, and real life experiences. Hear how Angélique has done that in her experiences to make her get from a freelance designer through UX, user experience, and also all the way to product design. Look out for how assuming responsibility to educate the others about the value you bring to the table can help you accomplish your goals, and how collaborating with stakeholders on various functions and backgrounds to accomplish results faster works in your favor. You'll hear things about concepts like mid to high fidelity, about the process of iteration and how important it is to do it in the real world, and cultivating a growth mindset to continue learning. So this episode itself is just packed with all that and more as Angélique shares her story for all of us employees. So look out for those things. And what I would like you to do is come out and talk to us about the 3 biggest takeaways that you took from this episode over in the Empjoyment community. You can join the Empjoyment community really easily by going to www.empjoyment.com/community, or type in the word employment to the number 33444. And when I say type, I mean text. So you can just take out your phone right now, go to your messages app and text employment to 33444, and you'll get the next steps to be a part of the community. In addition to talking about each of the different episodes that we're talking through and sharing the takeaways and some of the actions that we've taken as a result of these episodes, we're also joined by past guests, other people who are involved in employment, and other people just like you who are looking to make the transition into technology. And one of the biggest benefits of being part of the employment community is that you help to steer the direction of where employment goes in the future. Which guests should we bring on to the podcast? Which workshops should we offer to employees? What types of topics do we need to be focusing on creating trainings and experiences for you to be able to add more bullets in a meaningful way to your resume and more projects in a meaningful way to your portfolio? We're about getting you results, and we do that through action. Action is happening every day in the Empjoyment community. Come be a part of it over at empjoyment.com/community. So with that there, let's jump into this amazing conversation with Angélique, and really, let's go forth and make something great happen today. Enjoy the episode. Hello, employees. How are you? This is Nemo Ashong here, and welcome to the Empjoyment Podcast, where we're focused on helping people just like you find enjoyment through employment. I have the pleasure of sitting here with Angélique Bélizair. And Angélique graduated in 2009 with a degree in design. She has worked as a freelance designer in social media before making a switch to UX, which is user experience, and product design. She now works at a startup called Managed by Q as a product designer. And you can find Managed by Q by going to www.managedbyq.com. So, Angélique, we've gone through. I've introduced you a little bit here in terms of this bio. We've gotten to know you a little bit from a professional standpoint, but it'd be really great to just get to know you a little bit better from a personal standpoint. Do you mind sharing your life, love, work, and passion with us?
Yeah, sure. So I actually will be starting at Managed by Q next week. I just got hired, so I'm super excited about that. And previously, I was working at VenueBook with Angela that introduced us.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's that's really, really exciting.
Yep, super happy. So I was a product designer also at VenueBook. Outside of work, I love cooking, drinking with my friends, hosting dinner parties, traveling, and I mean, above all, I think I love design. I love my job, and I'm really happy to be sharing this with you today.
I'm really happy as well. I can already like hear and like see like how it's not often that people come out and they're like, I love my job, I love design, and I cannot wait to like dive in and find out more about that there. Just to help us like frame this conversation here, I'd love to start things off with like some kind of success quote or mantra or some motto that you've used to gain success in your journey. Would you mind sharing one of that with all of us here today?
Yeah, so I think it's very relevant for the specific podcast, but I wrote it down, I think it was like a couple of years ago when I was starting my first job as a UX designer at the time. And it's a quote from Dr. Seuss, and it says, "You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose." And so I wrote it down on a Post-it note that I kept on my desk every day. I actually have a couple ones that I would switch. I would like pile different ones every day to like be inspired at work. But most of the time that was the one that was at the top, and I used it kind of like to motivate myself. And I felt really stuck at this old position. And so I was like, maybe I should do something else. And it's funny, after reading this quote like every day for a year, I was like, I'm gonna get another job. And that's what I did.
Wow. So like, I love that. So a couple of different things. Hey, you're like sitting there, you're reading that quote, and it really actually helped move you forward and put it into life there. So like, can you talk about like that decision there when you decided like, all right, you know what? I've been reading this quote, I'm going to steer my life in a way. Like, how did that take place for you?
Well, I think it kind of happened several times. The first time it happened was when I made this career change. So, well, not so much a career change. I was still in design, but I was mostly doing print design. And I was working as a freelancer in social media. And I wanted to learn more about digital products and web and mobile applications. And I didn't really know that it was like tech, like I want to be like working for a tech startup, but I knew that that's what I liked. And I took a course at General Assembly called UX Design Immersive. It's like their 3 months program, which was great. And so that was kind of, I don't really like what I'm doing right now. I want to do something else. And it's kind of like, just do it. It's up to you to go where you want to be.
Oh, absolutely. That is so fantastic. Just go out there and do it. And it's up to you.
I mean, it's sometimes difficult, but it's still up to you. Like no one else going to do it for you. So
most definitely. What would you say? Like, I mean, I've found that the things that are worth doing are often the most difficult thing to do. So what would you find? What would you say was the most difficult part of like this kind of transition for you? And then we'll talk about your journey overall in just a bit.
I think it was a little scary because, well, the course was $10,000 for 2.5 months, and then you have to look for a job. So you have to have enough, either savings or you can, have a loan, but you have to plan, okay, how many months am I going to be unemployed after I get the course? And so it's kind of like scary. Like I have the security of my job right now, but I guess it's like you said, you can't have something great without taking risks. So it's the risk versus reward part. And I didn't know if I was going to get a job. I didn't know if I was going to like it. But I mean, you try to mitigate the risk. I did talk to other people that took the course and they told me it was great. They loved it. And they, they thought it was really worth the price. And, now that I took it, I can also say that it's probably the best $10,000 I've ever invested in my life.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I think that's such a strong statement there because like, you use the word invested. And I think that's like, it's a mindset that I think really a lot of times can hold people back from making the decision that's actually going to make them move forward. Because they might say, oh, to pay or it costs me $10,000. And it's like, no, you invested in yourself. You put that money and you made that investment and it's now giving you dividends on top of that. Like that's what an investment does.
Right.
And I think
I
it's
mean, I'm getting really good jobs that I love and they pay really well. So it's like
yeah.
I paid it off in 3 months and I'm making a lot of money on top of that.
There it is. There it is. So employees, take the time to like as you're going through this year, like take the time to think about like what investments are you making? And please know that you're always making an investment. It might be an investment of time if you're not spending your money. So that could either be like learning things the long way or taking a long time to learn things. Or it could be, investing in a future that's not the future you want by just staying in the role that you're at. So Angélique, can we talk a little bit here about design in general and then go through your journey? I think that like since design is such a big part of it for you, I want to make sure that that employees have a chance to like really understand what it is. So can you tell us a little bit about design itself and then maybe what got you interested in it to start out with?
Ooh, that's a complicated question.
Mm.
But I guess so. I learned print design. I studied print design in school. So it's advertising and publishing, layout, typography, all those things, which I loved. I didn't like advertising though, but I thought I wanted to do advertising and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to design school and learn this. And I liked everything else but advertising. And I think I've always loved design and I've always wanted to be a designer. So, if you were in a different career path, I don't know how that would translate, but I think it's wanting to solve problems creatively, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does.
And yeah. And so I think in general now, like there's a lot of types of design where you have interior design, you have, I don't know, architecture, product design, graphic design. They're all like similar but a little different. And so more specifically, what I do is I design websites and application, what we call, like in the jargon, we call it a digital product. What I like about it is that you can, if you work for a startup, which is what I want to do and what I do, you can grow with the product. So you learn, you try out features and you get feedback from your users and you see how people interact with your product and you can add things to it and remove things to it. And you grow and learn with your product and with your users. So it's constant evolution. It's never, this is what I've designed and this is it. It's not like a poster, which is also great. It's a different form of design. But what I love about digital design is like it's always changing. And on top of the visual aspect, you have to understand how it works. So I'm going to give you another quote, and you didn't ask for it, but this was the other quote that was at my desk, actually. And it was from Steve Jobs that said something like, design is not just how it looks, it's how it works. And that's very relevant for, all your devices, your computer, everything. Like it has to look and work great for you to want to use it every day and be useful, basically.
Wow. Like I'm sitting here, design is not just how it looks, but it's also how it works.
Definitely, yes.
And I feel like, at least from my experience, like when I've experienced great design, it like, how do I describe it? It's almost like I'll talk to my parents. My parents, my dad's constantly asking me, he's like, hey, can you set me up with, this thing or another? And I'm like, this thing has been specifically designed so that anyone in the world, a 10-year-old can pick this up and just know exactly what to do. It could be, it's different from something that just looks beautiful. And you're like, oh, this is so great. I don't know what to do with it. It's like, no, people have taken a lot of time to make sure that it works and that you can make it work on its own. Is that some of the work that you do there, like to kind of make sure that an end user gets a chance to really experience it from that perspective?
Sorry, you're cutting off a bit. Can you repeat that last sentence?
Absolutely. Is that some of the work that you do there? Is it just kind of making sure that the end user is able to interact with the product in the way that it's intended?
Yes, very much so. There are several ways to do this. I can talk about this for hours. You can stop me, but the way the process works. My process is like I interview people that are using the product or are susceptible to use the product. And, we ask them about not so much like how likely are you to use this thing, because that's very leading and that's not really, there's a difference between what people say and what people do, but more Like if you were building a software for the event industry, like my previous startup, you would ask them, how do you plan events and how do you book events? And, tell me how you go about doing it and what are important things to you and what bothers you about this process, things like that. So it's like learning about people and, understanding their needs and their pain points, and then translating that into a viable product, something that works for them.
Awesome. Well, like now that you've started this, I'm really interested in like the rest of the design process for you. So you're sitting there, you're interviewing them, and you're asking questions that are open ended that aren't needed. So you get this here, and they tell you how they go about doing things here. Like, what happens next?
So I mean, there are several things depending on how much time you have and the requirements. It doesn't start quite at I'm going to talk to people. Or it can, but it also starts with if you already have an existing product, which was my case at VenueBook. You have business requirements and business goals. We need to have this amount of signups by the end of the month or something like that. And then you have also like product requirements. And then you have feature requests from there's a lot going on at a startup, right? But features requests from other teams, like, our customers said that they needed that, so can we change that in a feature? So you gather all of this. The product manager gathers all of this in requirements and tells you this is what we need to build, and then you find your users and you go and talk to them. Like I just said, you have a few key takeaways. Something else that we've done at VenueBook was this. I'm not really sure how to call it. I don't know if it has an official name. I call it a features workshop, where if you were to redesign, so this was when we were redesigning the marketplace. We wanted to come up with the features that people wanted for a product. And so we write anything that we can think of on a Post-it note and for a feature. And then we place it on a XY axis from the least nice to have to most important, and then easy to implement to hard to implement, from either like a tech standpoint or logistic. Like, what if we don't have this data? We're going to have to collect it and it's going to take another 2 weeks. So things like that. And then based on that, you can decide, okay, those are the most important features that are easier to implement. So we're going to start with those. And then, you create some sort of prioritization for that. So that's really useful when building products or coming up with features. And then I really like doing, I think that's my favorite part. We do what I call a design studio, but I think I'm the only one that calls it that. So it's like a sketching session where you gather members of your team. So product managers, engineers, operations, maybe not too many people, just like one person from each team to get different inputs. Because everyone has a different view of the product, but it's really important to know you don't want to miss out on things. If you do it by yourself, there are things that you would never think of. So I really like working with other people for that reason. And so we all sketch out what we think it could look like based on, what we know from our users. So this is what the people said. Those are the features we came up with. What would a page look like? And we sketch out a lot of different ones, and then we give each other feedback, and we come up with a possible layout. But nothing is definitive because it's, there's always a lot of iterations. And so based on that, I will create what we call medium fidelity wireframes. So it's not so much a finalized design, but it's more like, what does the layout and skeleton of the page looks like? So instead of using photos, we'll just use like gray squares, but it's to see like where the elements would go and what goes on the page. So like it's a fast way of testing your product and testing your layout and features, and if your users can find the information on the page. And I think at this stage you can test user tests. So you have people coming in, or you go to their office or wherever they are, and you ask them questions on what do they think this page does, what information they expect to find on that page, things like that. And if you wanted to push it further, you could also build a prototype with those wireframes that you created, and then have them click through and and just ask them questions on, it's basically to test usability. So this is like a little advanced, but I really like doing this because seeing and hearing how people would use this prototype version of your product is really helpful. And that's what they've done for, I don't know if they do it for cars, but I know they do it for a lot of products that they build in the real world. Like, oh, we want to like build this new bed thing. And so you build a prototype of a bed and then you have people test it and give you feedback and then you iterate based on their feedback. It's actually pretty old. It's not new. But yeah, so that's what we do. We iterate on the feedback and then we do another version of a more finalized version. And then we test it again and again and again and again. Well, really as many times as possible, but we usually do it once and then we release it and then we test it when it's live again.
Wow. I am so happy I asked that question. This is so cool to be able to see like this process from start to finish. Angélique, like, thank you so much for like walking us through us there. If I was going to summarize it, so what I kind of heard here, let me know if I'm missing the thing, but we're going to bullet it down. I heard it starts out, and this is, I think, so important. It starts out with the requirements, the objectives. What are you trying to get done? And what do people want? So it's not just like, you're just like, oh, I think it'd be great. It's like, what are we trying to achieve with this here? Yeah. Then you go through a process of like gathering information as to like what could go into it, or what, like, how would people want to interact with it. So that goes with interviewing people. You're asking questions like, how do you plan events, as opposed to like, would this be useful for you? That's not the direction you go. You leave it very open. Then you have your features workshop where you go through and you're like, all right, this is the things that we think we can do. Let's put it on Post-its, or let's figure out like what we should actually start trying to focus on. Then you go to, I love this thing called design studio, so I'm going to call it then that. So then you go to your design studio, and this is like a sketching session where you have multiple people doing a bunch of different things from all over the organization, and then they put in their interpretation of what they think it should look like, and then you go ahead, you synthesize that, and you create a wireframe. You actually gave it a name. You said it was medium or minimal. What was the name of it? Yeah,
medium fidelity, because you don't want it to have too much details. So you have low fidelity with it's almost like a paper sketch, and then a medium fidelity, it's like a sketch on the computer, and then a high fidelity, which is basically what it looks like when it's going to be built, or very close to that.
Oh, wow! Thank you for that. Like, I appreciate you like opening up the hood and giving us a chance to like understand it there. So you take this here, you have the sketches, you create that medium fidelity wireframes, and then you start going for user testing and see like usability. And again, in here, you're asking really awesome questions like, what do you think this page does? As opposed to saying, this is the page for this. You're like, here it is. And what was really cool is like, you like seeing and hearing, you're like observing how people naturally interact with it.
Pretty much.
And then you just continue to iterate that process from there.
Yes.
Yes, that is awesome there. Thank you. I'm like
design process.
That feels good. And I have this general theory. I'm like, if I cannot say it out loud back, then I don't truly know it. So I will take that in, and I appreciate you confirming that there. Yeah.
Well, I think you could be a designer. There you go.
Yes. Well, honestly, Angélique, like I am a designer in a lot of different ways. And I think that the process that you just described, like whether anyone is designing websites or designing like their next party, or designing, like what project that they're supposed to like do, or what their next project should entail, like these types of elements, I feel like with any kind of product goes into it. Like these stages here are all very consistent. I think like when you were describing this here, I was like, this is how, even with enjoyment, like I went around and I was like, hey, I think, I know what the end goal is that I'm trying to get with this here. Let me talk to people to see what are their pain points? Like, I want to help people get into jobs in tech. What's holding them back? Why, like what's making that difficult for them? And that's what came into the design of this podcast, like the questions that that we ask here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I do consider myself a designer. I had the pleasure of working with a few designers who are, especially in user experience, and the the minds are just so perfect, if I can say that. Just
Yeah.
like sitting down and doing different things, like we did like post-it notes, and they're like, hey, here goes something, like, how would you group this? You know, what things go together? And everything that I thought was happening, everything I thought people would do, it just ended up being the opposite. And the result
Card
was this
sorting.
card sorting. There it is.
I've done that too. That's for heavy architecture websites. So there's lots of little things and techniques that you can do and test on people, but it depends on your product. Like if I had a website it's more for e-commerce with 10 different categories, and with like, let's say you sold clothes, so you had like pants and shirts and shoes and bags and accessories. I would ask people, I would have all my items, or like 100 to 100 samples of my items, and ask people, group these together and name your categories. Because sometimes if you I don't know, the names on clothing sites are a little confusing sometimes. I'm looking for something, I can't really find it under, you know, whatever name, this like jumpsuits, so like, well, that's not quite what I'm looking for. So you want to have people name it themselves, to be like, I'm going to call it the way you call it.
Yes, indeed. So I mean, this has been absolutely wonderful. I have a question for you real quick, and then we'll jump more into your journey and some of the roadblocks you had. But you said you were a freelance designer, and I was just kind of curious, how were you able to do this process, including the usability testing and the interviews and such, when you weren't part of an organization?
So before I learned UX, I was not doing UX. I was just doing graphic design. But I had a couple freelance clients, and we had that was right after school, and they let us use the school. So we had tables, and we had boards that we could write on and things like that. So when I had my freelance client, I would just go to the school and work there.
Awesome. I love how you just like using the resources available to you.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, use whatever you can. We also asked, it was me and someone else on that for this project. And we also asked our client if he could give us like customers that he had to interview, things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with that here, like now we've gone back to kind of like the beginning here. I would love to get a clearer sense of as to what your journey was. You kind of touched upon some of the different things that you did throughout your career. But I want to just make sure that, you know, if you could how do you envision your journey to this moment here? And what were the steps that were involved to get you from one place to the next?
I think it was kind of, that's an interesting question. It's kind of like having a goal, but not super defined. Like you can't be like, this is where I'll be, because it always changes and moves. But having a vague idea of where you want to be and trying to take steps further to that. So I'm going to be more specific. So I studied UX design, and I found a couple freelance gigs, and I wanted to have a full-time UX design job to work for a startup. And the first job I had was for a financial services company. Well, it was actually consulting. So I was a UX consultant, but I was hired by this company. And I didn't really like the culture. I liked what I did. I wanted to work for a startup. And so this wasn't, jumping from client to client was not really what I wanted to do. But it gave me the experience. So it was like a first, I guess getting this first job helps you on your resume, like building the legitimacy of, I have experience in UX and I've done this, and you can show this is all the work that I've done. And so after, I think I stayed there for like 10 months, not even a year. And I think after 10 months, I looked for the jobs, specifically startups. And I think it's also important to know why you're switching, because a lot of people ask me, you sound like more of an agency profile, and what you're doing is not really you don't have any startup experience. Startups are kind of afraid when you have no startup experience, because it's so fast-paced and kind of scrappy. Like you have to be doing a lot of things really quickly and moving on really quickly. So you kind of have to prove yourself or explain why you want to make that switch. I forgot what I said. I think I had good design skills, so that was really helpful. But in general, I still feel this way to this day. I was telling them that I want I want to focus on one product instead of jumping from project to project, and I want to grow with the product. And I like smaller companies because you're closer to people and you're closer to your team, and I guess there's more room for your own ideas if you work for huge corporations. And maybe I'm wrong. I haven't worked for tons of different places, but it was like that from my experience. My previous job, it was a really big corporation, and there's very little room. You have a project and this is what you do, and there was very little room for creativity. And if you're working for a small startup, you can talk to the CEO and say, hey, I have an idea. And if they implement it, part of, some of your ideas are live out there on the site, which is really rewarding and awesome. Does that answer your question? I kind of went over.
No, it really does. And it's like, firstly, just congratulations on being able to like put yourself in that position there. And I think the position where you can just do something and you can have some of your ideas come to life, as opposed to it just being like purely dictated to you, which I think is really fun. And I think this is really helpful because where we took the journey was from after you finished the General Assembly course. And so what I got from that is that you finished General Assembly, you had some time where you're like looking for a role. You found a role as a UX consultant in finance, and you use that to build your experience. And you're like, okay, like let me make sure that there is something. You're taking your resume from a low fidelity to a medium fidelity or high fidelity concept, and then use that to transition then into the startup world. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think every role is a stepping stone. That's kind of how I see it. Even if you feel like, like my next position, I'm really excited. It's not, I don't want it to end. I don't, I'm not going there with the intention of leaving in a year. But your goal always moves and always change, and you evolve. And so I think seeing roles as stepping stones kind of help you get to the next level.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's, the next level within my company, it could be that too.
Well, that's really cool. And I think this concept of evolution and evolving and like is something that really seems to be core to you here. You brought it up a couple of different times, and I'm kind of curious, as you were evolving and as you were like making progress through your professional journey. I'm sure you hit some roadblocks along the way, and you faced some challenges that just didn't work out the way you wanted to. So, would you mind sharing with us a story of one specific challenge or difficult time, and quite frankly, a time that you failed and the steps that you took to overcome it?
Well, I never fail. So.
Mm-hmm. There it is. And that's the trick behind the question. Now, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's like a failure. I mean, I guess, yeah, it is. But a roadblock. So at my previous position, I was the only designer. And so you have to fight for design and UX all the time. And I guess one of my issues that I had a manager that didn't really understand or cared about design, and not just my manager, actually anyone I worked with. But if my manager is like, he didn't really give me the room to do a lot of design. It's just like, well, those are the requirements and this is what we're going to do. And I'm sure a lot of people are, want to be more creative and don't always have the room. And so, well, I kind of talked about it already, but I guess the way I overcame that is it's still in progress. Like it's never really done. Like you, as a designer and as a UX designer, you always have to teach people about what it is, because a lot of people don't know it. And half of your job is telling people about your job and explaining why it matters and explaining why it's important and explaining why it's going to save the company a lot of money. So it's kind of a fight. It's a great fight, but it's a fight. And so some of the things I did was telling my teammates about it, telling my manager about it, like, hey, here's the way we could do it. And this is how long it's going to take. And it would be a lot better if we did it now rather than further down the road after we already spent all the resources, for example. And so they gave me also the great thing for when you work for small companies is that they gave me the room and the time to own this project. So the redesign of the marketplace, and we held workshops. So I had a small team. I actually worked with Angela for this. Angela and her team, they're amazing people. And so we had those workshops for like the features, the design studio. What else did we do? I think we had, I would always ask them for feedback and include them in the design process. They also did the interviews. They did a ton of research before we started the project. One of the people I was working with was a product strategist. And what he did was, researching the market and understanding where we need to go. So based on our product, based on how the market looks like right now, this is what we need on our product to, get better and have more money, pretty much. So yeah, I guess keep communicating and tell people about, if you're a designer and you're the only designer, try to teach other people about design, because it's not so much that they don't care about design. It's just they don't know about it and they don't understand why you do what you do. So if you say, here's why I'm doing this and here are the results, they will see value in it.
So why do you do what you do, and why do you consider design to be important at a company?
Well, that's you have hard questions.
I want to just give you a chance to if you had to put it out there for everyone listening right now, for them to just get an understanding as to like, why is design important in general? Because I truly believe it.
Yeah.
Give you the opportunity as well.
Yeah. No, I was gonna answer. For several reasons. The first that comes to mind is it shapes your product and it makes your product more appealing to the world. It's kind of like, having raw ingredients and then the chef prepares it in a delicious meal and then everyone wants to eat it. But if you just saw the ingredients, you'd be like, oh, I don't really want to eat that. I don't know if it's a good metaphor for this, but it's basically shaping a product into something that people actually want to use. And if you were not here to design it, maybe no one would want to use this product, and then your company would not make money, which defeats the purpose of a business, right? I mean, it's not just to make money. I guess it's also to be useful in solving a problem and bringing, a solution to an everyday problem. Like Uber solves the problem of transportation. Like if I'm out drinking, I can't drive my car to go home, but Uber is here now, so I can just use that. So there are two things that design do. It's shape your product and solve a problem. If you don't have problem solvers, you just have problems.
Booyah. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a great answer, but
no, it is. I mean, like, I guess the end of the day, it's, whatever you do to help others get to understand more about design, I think is important. I think something that really strikes me is, and I think this is why I think about design a lot, is building something that people actually want to use, right? Because one of the quotes that I say, it's almost like an anti-motto for me, is if you build it, they will come. I'm like, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that you can just build it and people are like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Like, no one really gets it. It's this hidden process of iteration. It's this hidden process of design that a lot of people just don't see. Like, I'll look at even just articles that make it onto Facebook. Like, so there is Upwork and such. Like, when they talk about their iterative process to design just the right headline that comes up to get people to click on it, it goes through all of these stages. And yet I think a lot of people just think, oh, just pick a headline and just go with it, and it'll just become viral. It's like, nope, it's been tested in a small group of people for a very long time, and this is the most viral of all of them, and that's why it goes viral. It's systematic. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk here. We talked about so many different things here, Angélique. I'd love to know more about a moment that brought you great joy. Your proudest professional moment there. Would you mind sharing with us something that you felt like you did really well on, and the steps that led to your success?
Yeah. So I actually talked about it a lot, but it's more about how it made me feel at this point. So when I was given, the time and resources for this redesign project, and I worked with people that were really smart, that I really enjoy as people, but I also really enjoy working with them. So we did a lot of research. I had the workshop, and we were very productive. And I think my proudest moment was that everyone trusted me with the process and believed in me and understood how important the research was prior to sketching or doing anything. So I think it's like being trusted by your coworkers and being able to collaborate with people that you enjoy working with is my proudest moment.
I like that. Now, can I dive a little bit deeper on that a little bit here? Because I can understand why that trust is so important, or like why that is so great. Because, you know, just earlier you were saying how like you almost have to fight sometimes to make sure people even know what you do and the value that you add. And it feels like in this moment here, people bought in. They believed in the value and they were ready for it. So I think just to kind of help close that gap here, I'm like, how did you get like a group of people to just be like, rah, yeah, let's go do the research. Yeah, no, we don't know the answers. Let's go through this design process. Like, can you take us through that specific process, or what you did to have that kind of success, set yourself up for success?
I think you're going to be upset. I think it took a lot of convincing, but I also worked with someone else that had, I think, a better position than me, and I convinced him to convince the CEO. So I kind of want to say someone else did all the convincing.
Oh, but no. This is definitely still you there, right? Like,
you have to talk to the right people. Sometimes you have to go through someone else to convince another person.
Yeah,
it's a little tricky.
I feel like that's, and like, but that's the nice thing about it, right? And I appreciate it. So quite frankly, I'm always smiling, so I'm almost never upset. You can, the truth is, and how people actually go through it, that like this always brings me great joy. And I think that I don't know how to describe it. I guess my thing is like, I want to like make sure that we look at things as they truly are, right? And so, you know, you had an idea and you knew that like you knew that you wanted to get heard. And what really strikes me, and I wanted to say kudos to you for this year, is that you felt that your idea was bigger than your ego, in the sense that like it didn't have to be you delivering it to the CEO. It didn't have to be you going up there. You're like, who are the people in my network or people that I know that I can talk to that would help champion this here? Because there are a lot of different things that a startup, you said to yourself, a lot of different things a startup has to do. And you talked about how you prioritize different projects or different features and such. I'm sure they do the same thing with projects there. So to have a person championing you on that, I think is absolutely essential. For most of my ideas and projects at AppNexus, my manager was my chief champion. And she's like, all right, let's go ahead and let me run this up here. And I feel like you understand why it's important. You're talking to the people to see what value will add. Let me run it up here, but just get started, and then like we'll make things come from there. So I don't know. I think what you're talking about is the realistic way as to how to influence change or get things done. So I'm just really happy you shared that there. Anything else you want to add on that, or any kind of like insights you have around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were to have a takeaway, it would be collaboration is key, and you can't do it all by yourself. Despite your role, even if you're not a designer, I think most positions nowadays make it so that hello?
Yeah, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought I lost you for a second.
Employees, we're still here. So you were saying?
I was saying collaboration is key. You can't do it all by yourself, and combining the skills of your team will make you achieve greater results. So be a team player. And what's this expression that says the sum of the people is greater than the whole? I said that wrong.
But I think we all know what it is. Someone's like right now just screaming it out in their car. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yes, that's what it is.
Something like that. Employees, send us a message. Let us know what it really is, and then let's put that into action there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Angélique. And right now, then we've talked all throughout like all these things that have happened in the past. Looking ahead here, what's getting you excited about your role, your journey, your life in design? Anything out there that really gets you excited?
Yeah. Well, you said looking ahead. You mean like in the future? I think it's very exciting.
For you right now, what are you excited about? Even
my new position, my new job, meeting lots of new people, working for a design-driven company, having to solve different problems, new problems, learning a lot more about design. So I changed positions because I wanted to learn more about design. At my old job I was the only designer, and my new position is I think 4 other designers. So that's, 5 times more designers and a lot more people that can teach me and show me. So I'm very excited about that. I guess becoming a better designer. But I was excited about that also at my previous position for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
I love it. It's your next evolution, right? And while you're there, you're evolving through that. So I think that's quite awesome. I like how you said design-driven company. And employees, like one thing that you might be able to take out of here is that it's almost like there's a design mindset. Whether or not you're doing the actual job of design, like, are you thinking about it in that kind of design process and understanding that, even just a pitch that you're making to a client is designed, and goes through the workshop and goes through the studio, and they're like, this is how I think it is. So I think I really do believe that we're all designers out there, and I can understand why you have that passion there, and it really comes through. So I just want to, as we wrap up here, I want to give you an opportunity. Do you have any questions for me? You've been awesome. You've been answering all of mine. I feel like it should be a two-way street at some point. Do you have any questions for me here? Yeah.
Well, you didn't mention that you were a designer. You just said you worked in tech. So I guess I'm curious about that. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role was on a team called People Experience. And in particular, I focused on the company culture. And this is the global company culture. So how do we uphold our values? How do we reward our values and make sure that and recognize them, right? How do we have the norms and culture and the way of doing things that, this group of people that underneath this umbrella of this company have all decided, this is how we want to play the game, right? What are the rules of the game, and how do we play it? So my role involved trying to make sure that, regardless of where people were in the world, they could collaborate very seamlessly. I was in advertising technology, which is the quickly expanding and evolving industry. So being able to stay in touch and being able to collaborate with people regardless of where they were was really important. And so I found the design portions coming in a lot in terms of building out various programs that we would do. So an example, I can give you 2 examples that come to mind. One of them being we wanted to find a way to connect our global offices. And one of the things that we did is we started out just by talking to them, met up with each of the different offices and had we used a focus group process in this case. And we talked to them and try to understand, what is it like to be in your office? Tell us about your culture. What should we know? And what started out as something that we were just hey, we want to make, get to know you a little bit better. Ended up launching a brand new initiative to kind of help not just our team get to know those people better, but the entire company get to know it. And it started through that design process there. Nice. Yeah, I worked on company internal websites with them and kind of worked directly with the UX team to bring that together. And that's when I really saw, that's when I was I became a fan. I was whoa, you're building something that matters as opposed to just building something. And it doesn't take that much more time to do something to build something that's truly great, because you're going to do all the steps anyway. You're going to do it all anyway. You're going to build something, and it doesn't take. So
you might as well.
Yeah. And so that's been my experience, at least in my prior role with design. But I look at myself. I would say overall, a big part of the way that I approach life is through design. I'm literally sitting here talking to you on a podcast because I'm what's the life that I want to design for myself? I would love to talk to really great people who are happy about what they do and are passionate about it. And Angélique, I really have to say, that passion has come through so clearly through this conversation.
Awesome. Great.
I think you are awesome. I think you are great. I'm also double thumbs up here. It's it's been really, really fun.
Cool.
Do you have a closing comment or thought that you want to leave with employees and maybe how they can stay in touch with you going forward?
I have sure, yeah. I guess in general, when it comes to, well, not just when it comes to design in general, but I apply this to design. You have to enjoy the process, and it's not just about, the destination. It's about the journey and being mindful of every challenge and every opportunity and every failure that you have, because that's what will shape your experience in a good way. And I think it's really important to have a growth mindset. It's about having a growth mindset, learning from your mistakes and staying curious by reading design articles or keeping up with the latest design trends and all those things. I guess I'm like this. I love learning, and I want to keep learning, and I want to keep learning from people, mistakes, failures, anything. So yeah.
Wow. Absolutely. Thank you, Angélique. I think that's like this growth mindset and this idea of continuous learning is something that just keeps coming up there. Like that seems to be like one of the key things behind people being successful. So I'm glad that you exhibit it. I'm really happy that you're able to share your story. Is there a way that you would like us to keep in touch with you?
Sure. What's your preferred?
Well, we can find you on LinkedIn if that works. We're also starting up the Empjoyment community, which I'll invite you to if you're interested in helping to just be a part of an inspired group of people who are trying to transform their lives and do it together. So if you're interested in that, like you will also have an invite there.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you can find me, like you said, but my name is a little hard to pronounce or spell. So it's Angélique Bélizair on LinkedIn. I think there's only one, so you can just add me. My website is angeliquebelizair.com, and there's also a link where you can email me on there. So yeah, email, LinkedIn, whichever.
So we'll make this super simple for all of you employees. I will add this onto the show notes page, which you can find on empjoyment.com /Angélique. And I think like that will get you there, and you'll get all the contact information. And we'll also see you in the community.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time here. We'll go ahead and end this conversation, but wanted to say thank you for being so generous with your time and your experiences. You're awesome, and go forth and keep bringing joy to the world.
Well, thank you so much. And you too.
All right, employees, what did you think of that episode? And more importantly, what are you going to do now that you have heard that episode? Angélique shared so many great things in there, including the various ways that you can pursue the same role, like the multiple types of ways of doing design, and how you can find solutions that don't just exist, but instead transform lives by making it easy and desirable for people to use it through design. What I'd like to do now is give you your quest for today, and we'll be talking about this over in the Empjoyment community. But Angélique shared a number of different ways that she has gone out of her way to improve herself, to increase her understanding, to increase her education, and more importantly, to apply it such that she can get the jobs that she's looking for. So what I'll ask of you is to find one thing that you are going to do in the next 2 weeks to increase your knowledge about the career that you want to be a part of. And let's take that a step further to go beyond increasing the knowledge to put it into action. So what are you going to do in the next 2 weeks to demonstrate the knowledge that you'll build that moves you one step closer? Come tell us about it over in the Empjoyment community. We'd love to see you there. It's empjoyment.com/community, or text the word Empjoyment to 33444. That's all you got to do. You can jump in there and just be a part of the conversation and help us know where you want things to go in the future for Empjoyment to get you to the next stage of your tech journey. So with that, we'll end the episode here. Go forth and spread joy today. I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.